Hello good people of YouTube, and welcome to my hobby channel. One of the things that I wanted to do with the videos that I create is take a look back at some of the publications that have had an impact on me during my time in the hobby, whether they're catalogues, rule books, magazines or novels. And one of the earliest books that I have fond memories of is this Citadel catalogue from the early 1980s. Now this is actually my own personal copy. I've had this since I was a school kid, playing Dungeons and Dragons with school friends and swapping figures in the playground. And this catalogue had a really big impact on me. Not only did I absolutely love the dragon that's pictured on the front cover here, that is the Citadel dragon, which is sometimes affectionately known as the chicken dragon because it was the size of a chicken, and it was cast in metal, so it was really heavy and really expensive and well beyond the reaches of a young spotty teenager whose paper round paid him 50p a week. So if we take a quick look inside, I'm hoping that it won't strobe too much. There was an introduction there that was written by Brian Ansell, who was the general manager of Citadel Miniatures at the time. And there are plenty of videos out on YouTube with former staff members of Citadel Miniatures that explain the history of the company and the things that happened, and how Brian Ansell eventually went on to form War Games Foundry and take some of these early Citadel miniatures with him. So lots of fascinating videos out there. But this is a real trip down memory lane for me, and I can remember spending hours. I think I even memorized the whole kind of product catalogue when I was younger, the different poses, the different variants, and of course I always wanted one of these dragons. I did eventually get one. But these were £3.50 each, so that was like 7 weeks of paper rounds that I'd have to do to save up for that. We've got humanoid adventurers, 40p each, so I could, if I wanted to, do my paper round and then go into town at the weekend. Lived in Lincolnshire at the time, and spend that pocket money on one miniature. Which I did from time to time. But there were goblins, undead, and this catalogue was a mix of Citadel miniatures and also Ralpartha miniatures. Now collectors obviously are very keen on the distinction. Arguably Citadel is probably more collectible than Ralpartha, but at the time we didn't care. If it was Citadel or Ralpartha, then it was the bee's knees, and we wanted it. I do actually have that tree somewhere, I think. I might have to do a painting video of that. I always wanted that troll. I don't think I ever had that two-headed troll, but I did get the Balrog miniature there. So I will, in future videos, do some painting videos of these old classics as and when I dig them out. But there were lots of historical miniatures as well that we used to buy and use in our fantasy games. There were Spacefarers, which was 25mm sci-fi, and there is the plan of the chicken dragon of the Citadel Imperial Dragon, £49.50. So as you can appreciate, that went well beyond anything that we could ever dream of affording. You know, like I said, I earned 50p a week from a paper round, so that was like 100 weeks, 2 years. I would never have been able to afford that. Still can't now either. And yeah, some RuneQuest stuff. I did have some RuneQuest minis, but we just used to mix and match all the time. We didn't really care. Traveller. Now that was 15mm sci-fi, and one of two of us did play a few Traveller games and used to collect those. And then we had the sort of box sets and the speciality sets, and I do have some of these, which again I will get out in future videos and do a restoration and a paint video for some of these. I've got the Dwarf King's Court for a start. I love that bear, and I did actually end up sculpting a 28mm bear of my own for the Battleforge miniatures, which was heavily influenced by that pose and that bear there. It was just a wonderful miniature. And then here we have the Citadel Giant. Not quite as expensive as the Chicken Dragon. This was only £29.50, but still, you know, that was a year's worth of paper round money and went well beyond anything I could afford. In later life, I did end up collecting, picking up some of the heads off eBay. I think I ended up with an arm and a few weapons, but then I ended up selling those off again. So I never actually owned this complete giant. I would love to. I have seen it. I have actually physically handled one of these. It was in the Brian Ousel's collection at War Games Foundry. When I was writing my books, I did get to meet Brian several times and go over his collection of lots of old miniatures, and that was a real privilege. Brian has, of course, now sadly passed away, but I have some very fond memories of spending some time up there, or down there now, because I'm located elsewhere. But yes, and these giants would go on to, and this catalogue indeed would go on to influence my own sculpting and the giants that I've created, which I look at in some of my other videos. And then we've got some elves, Ralpartha elves, which I always love. Ralpartha goblins, a wizard. I do actually have that wizard there. And then some other fighters and mythical creatures, and then some giants. And again, a lot of these are still available from Ralpartha Europe or Ralpartha Legacy, so you can still pick these up for you know, 15 quid each maybe. They were £2.50 back in the 1980s, and I did actually manage to get hold of that one. I did get hold of that one, and I did get hold of that dragon as well. So yeah, and I remember this as well, the Ralpartha Imperial Dragon. I think this may have been in the local model shop where I used to go and buy these miniatures. And I do have an example here of the way that they were packaged. This is one I picked up in either Lincoln or Newark. I can't remember which, but they went through several iterations. There were different coloured cards at one point with not much on, but this is one that survived. And basically that's the kind of thing that we would, as school kids, we would save our pocket money or our paper round money up and go off and buy. So that's an example of how the miniatures were packed at roughly the same time as this catalogue was out. And here we have an advert for Warhammer, and this is when we started getting into Warhammer. A friend of mine bought first edition, and I think he then went on and bought second edition as well. I didn't part with any cash until it came to third edition, and that is another book that I'll be looking at in one of these videos. But another reason why this particular catalogue here was so influential to me, and still means a lot, I still have very, as I said, fond memories of this catalogue, was because in the back there was a section on modelling and painting miniatures, and of course this would be the kind of the foundation stone that then led me to go on and write my own books. And as I've said in previous videos, I didn't just write about the latest fads in modelling and painting. I actually referred back to this. There have been lots of developments since this, but of course what we've got here is a sketch, tissues, toilet roll, a craft knife, thinners, because the paints were Humbrol enamel paints when we first started. So you'd sit in the kitchen on a Sunday afternoon after the dinner had been, you know, cleared away, and stink the house out, but painting models using solvent-based paints. Eventually acrylic paints did start to emerge, and I must admit it was a relief, because leaning over a painting table with all these solvents, I did used to end up with chapped lips and blistered skin quite often, so it wasn't perhaps as romantic as I think it is looking back on it now. But we've got types of paint here, so enamel and acrylic, and you can see that the enamel paints were generally cheaper, from 25p to 50p a pot. And they've got here period of use 2 to 3 months. I'm not sure how they came up with that. Drying time 1 to 6 hours, yes it would, and thinning agent thinners. But 50p to £3 for an acrylic paint, so they were more expensive at the time, quite definitely 1 to 2 years. I don't know, my acrylics, if I wasn't careful, used to dry out far sooner than my enamels. And drying time, yeah, 5 minutes to an hour. Well, anyway, all fun and games. But the reason why this as I said, this kind of meant so much was because of this chart here. Now, obviously Brian Ansell's part of Citadel, or, you know, owned Citadel or Games Workshop when this was brought out. He went on to develop this further with War Games Foundry, and working with Kevin Dallymore, they created the Foundry sort of paint system. And again, I've got books on that, and I have actually purchased the Foundry painting system twice in my lifetime as a modeler and miniature painter. But here we can see the kind of the embryonic beginnings of that. So this color chart that I used to refer to all the time when painting my early Citadel miniatures and my even my Airfix models, it shows the color, and basically you've got a first color, you've got a dry brush, and you've got a highlight. So your first color was your base tone, your dry brush was your mid tone, and your highlight was self-explanatory. One of the things that we did used to do, because back then there were no primers, and certainly no primers that we could afford, you'd clean your metal miniature with white spirit. You'd dry it with a tissue and leave it to one side for the white spirit to evaporate. And then when you were sure that the model was clean, you would paint it with black enamel paint. You might thin that down slightly with a solvent thinner, but then you'd wipe all that off with a tissue. So all that would be left is the black enamel in all the recesses, all the deep cracks, crevices, and that would act as your base coat or your primer. And then on top of that, you'd paint the first color, but you'd only paint where the black hadn't settled. Then you dry brush on top of that, and then highlight. So the dry brush was, as I said, picking out the mid-tones, and the highlight, you just dot the detail. And this chart would then list sort of, you know, the main colours: black, brown, purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, red and white. So if you're doing black, then it suggests that your first colour is black. Your dry brush would be a dark grey or a mid grey, and then you'd highlight white. But that really would just be the edges, otherwise you'd end up with something that looked grey. If you take a green, for example, dark green as your first colour, bearing in mind that your miniature had probably already had that black wash that you applied and then sort of wiped off. So dark green was your first colour. You'd then dry brush in a regular green, and then you'd highlight in a white yellow. And that was very influential. And even to this day, there are times when I kind of follow that method of putting down a base colour, dry brushing a mid-tone, and then just highlighting with a lighter colour to pick out the details. Speed paints have changed the way I paint. They've changed the way all of us paint, but not every model needs to be painted with a zenithal prime. So to me, this is still a very current and very sort of valuable piece of my modelling history. And then there were little illustrations here that would show you how to highlight faces, and then finishing off with a varnishing, and so on and so forth. And then there was a little section here as well about sort of modelling and converting and assembling miniatures. So not only does it show you how to sort of remove a hand and pin it and add another hand, a different hand. This was how we would put big miniatures together. So there were all the tools that you would need, and the formula of my modelling books very much you know, adheres to this. And then there are extra bits about sort of converting and using putty I'm not actually sure what that is, some kind of clay shaper, but it always looked like a weird sort of body part. And then there were little hints and tips and techniques on sculpting scales, whether they were fish scales or scale mail, I don't know. There was doing hair, removing unwanted equipment and adding other equipment. And bearing in mind, all of this was done on metal miniatures at the time. There were no plastics that were readily available when this came out. And then, yeah, a little bit at the back about ordering miniatures, written by Rick Priestley. And then I think there were some address labels for you to, when you sent off your order, you would enclose a stamped addressed envelope. Oh, those halcyon days, hey? And there we are. So that is a longer look, but still a brief look at a very influential catalogue in my formative years as a wargamer and collector of Citadel miniatures. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.